For a guy who only appears in the game 4 times, the Janitor is one of the most talked about characters in Night in the Woods. Mysterious, esoteric, and suspiciously timely with his appearances, people have been speculating about him ever since the game came out back in 2017. Through the Janitor, the developers of Night in the Woods are able to touch on one of their core themes, the importance of respecting all workers, and provide us curious players with a clear window to dive into the world of theory and lore. But before I go on, if you are a Night in the Woods fan, then please be sure to like, subscribe, and consider supporting me with a YouTube channel membership or over on Patreon. My dream is to make these videos full-time someday, and by doing any of those things, you'll be helping make that a reality. The Janitor is the very first character May meets upon her return to Possum Springs. No matter what your theory is on him, and trust me, we'll be talking about that plenty down the line here, this is a significant choice by the developers. You only get one chance to make a first impression on players, and to position the Janitor here certainly suggests some importance. In any case, when May arrives at the bus station, the Janitor is fixing the door, and says that she can't leave until he's done. He then asks her to get him a Fiasco Cola from the vending machine, which he says he's rigged to work for free, as he often does when he's doing late night repairs. It's a small moment, but it's worth noting that the purpose of this request appears to be to introduce players to the game's grab mechanic, which comes up a few times, like when May steals the pretzels from the pierogi stand. So, as much as the Janitor is saying that May can't leave until he's done with his work, the developers are saying that the player can't leave until they've learned one of the few true gameplay mechanics that Night in the Woods has. May's commentary here about the lime Fiasco Cola amuses me as well, because during my college years in Pittsburgh, which is close to where Night in the Woods takes place, it always seemed like the convenience stores and vending machines had an absolute abundance of flavored colas, like vanilla Coke and Pepsi Lime. While out here in Philly, on the other side of the state, those flavors are, for whatever reason, hard to come by. With Fiasco Cola in hand, May returns to the Janitor, who promptly opens it with his drill and chugs it down. He then tells her that he's done working on the door and rolls out. We don't see the Janitor again until midway through the game, during the Harfest play, which I discussed at length in my last video. I'll have a bit more to say about his appearance here from a theory perspective later, but for now, let's stick to the facts. He steps into the role of the Forest God, and his appearance comes as a complete shock to May. She mentions their meeting at the bus station and draws attention to his sudden arrival. He acknowledges this briefly, then gets right into character, telling the witch that she's tarried too long in this world and banishing her to wander the night through the stranger places. May interprets some of this literally, and can even ask the Janitor how he knows so much about her. The implication here, clearly, is that May thinks the Janitor is aware of the dreams she's been having, the dreams where she appears to astral project to other realms. He then name drops the title in a hot tub time machine-esque way, and tells her to be aware of ghosts before exiting stage left, leaving May, once again, with more questions than answers. Looking back at this appearance, a few things stand out to me. First, despite being a part of the play, the Janitor doesn't join the rest of the cast for the curtain call. And speaking of the cast, it's entirely made up of people B knows. Danny and Bill work at the Pickaxe, and May and Greg are two of her best friends, which stands to reason that the Janitor is probably someone she knows as well. But how does she know the Janitor? Well, he is a handyman, and B runs a hardware store, so it wouldn't surprise me if the Janitor is a regular customer at the old Pickaxe. I'm not suggesting that they're bros or anything like that, just that B might actually know the Janitor better than anyone else other than maybe May. My other observation here is how timely the Janitor's dialogue is. Even though these are surely the correct lines of the play from an in-universe perspective, they really are reflective of what May is going through, and his statement about ghosts at the end of the play no doubt influences her own belief that Ide is one. He also makes frequent mention of the woods, which, obviously, will become very important down the line here. It is in the title, after all. Overall, I think you can take his appearance here as a sign that things are about to get real from a narrative perspective. We saw him at the beginning of May's journey, when we were still learning about the troubled college dropout who'd come home to Possum Springs, and here at the middle, as the plot is about to dive into the supernatural, we see him again. It really is, in so many ways, such a fascinating segment. But if you ask me, his next appearance, his last mandatory part of the game, is even more interesting. After escaping from the cult and taking a massive fall in the woods, May has a series of dreams, one of which takes place at the church. Once all of the characters have taken their turn to talk about her and wish her well, or slander her, in Mr. Pemberton's case, the janitor shows up once again. As soon as he arrives, the scenery shifts to a hospital, and the gathered characters are reduced to just May's mom and dad, Pastor Kate, and the mysterious handyman himself. He apologizes for interrupting and asks what happened to our protagonist. May's dad asks who he is. May's mom asks if he's there to clean something up, and the janitor responds that he's supposed to be fixing a door, just like back at the bus station at the beginning of the game. He says May will be fine, at least for today, and then clarifies that he's indeed a janitor before leaving. This is yet another really intriguing part of the game, and at some point I'll do a full breakdown of what's happening here. But for now, let's focus on the janitor. Again, when he shows up, the scenery shifts, which implies he's exerting some level of control over her dreams. And once he leaves, just moments after he claimed to be here to, quote, fix a door, May wakes up. I think you can interpret this as him fixing the door out of these dreams, out of the weird apocalyptic nightmare she's having, so she can return to the real world. I'd also like to point out that his last substantial line here, where he says that May will be fine for today, is a bit of a paraphrase of May's line from the B ending, where she says that nothing can save us forever, but that a lot of things can save us today. So just as he foreshadowed the supernatural and the importance of the woods in the Harfest play, here, the janitor does the same with one of May's biggest lines, which, to many people, myself included, is one of the walk-away quotes from the game. The janitor's final appearance comes during the epilogue. Standing next to the statue in town center, and just a stone's throw from the old pickaxe, potentially another hint about a link between him and the store, the janitor and May talk about her return to Possum Springs, and all she's been through over the last few days. She also tries to get a name out of him one last time, but again, all he tells her is that he's the janitor. Anyway, May tells the janitor that she feels like she should have woken up that morning, the morning after her big showdown with the murder cult, and felt like she learned something from the ordeal. But she's not sure if that's the case. In response, the janitor tells her that the big things don't teach you anything. Rather, they make you something, and sometimes you just have to wait and see what comes of it. Before May can ponder this advice, the janitor says, "It's quitting time," and expresses his excitement for the Smelters game that evening. May says she'll see him around, to which he replies, "Not if I see you first, May," and then rolls on out. She calls out to him, asking him how he knows her name, but unfortunately for our protagonist, that's one question that will have to remain unanswered. In analyzing the janitor, I'd first like to acknowledge that this is some pretty well-traveled ground, which is something I haven't been able to say about most of the topics I cover on this channel. But the janitor is one of the most heavily discussed characters from Night in the Woods, and you can find plenty of theories about him all over the internet. Generally speaking, the conclusion most folks come to is that he's the forest god, some type of reincarnation of the forest god, or just God in general. Evidence that people frequently cite for this include the statue in the graveyard, which looks quite a bit like him, his comment about feeling as old as the trees, the fact that he takes on the role of the forest god in the Harfest play, and the many supernatural and unexplainable things that happen when he's around. That's some good evidence, and those are all good and plausible theories. I'm going to add my own spin to one of them in a few minutes here, but first, I'd like to discuss what this association does from a thematic perspective. Night in the Woods is by no means the first story to make a god, or simply someone of incredible power, a janitor. We see this in Bruce Almighty, and in the Remedy Connected Universe games with Ahti. In those stories, I'd interpret this as a means of expressing the idea that the divine can be found anywhere, even in people who do humble jobs like custodial work. But in Night in the Woods, a game that highlights workers' rights and labor unions, this dynamic takes on a bit of a twist. It's less about the divine and more about the work, the idea that all work is of value and deserving of respect. By setting up this sort of speculation in the first place, the developers of Night in the Woods are reminding us of this, that if one of the universe's foremost deities is going around fixing doors and doing whatever else needs done, then we should treat people who do such jobs the same way we treat our boss, a CEO, or anyone else with an occupation that's considered, traditionally speaking, to be more glamorous or of higher influence. In doing so, they're reinforcing one of the core themes of Night in the Woods. Whether it's steel workers, miners, factory workers, supermarket employees, or janitors, the game is constantly reminding us of the value and importance of all forms of labor, and that all workers are deserving of rights and respect. Now, from a theoretical perspective, what do I think is going on with the janitor? Well, I do think he's connected to the forest god. It makes a lot of sense, and between his role in the Harfest play and his comment about feeling as old as the trees, there's some good evidence for it. But I don't think he is the forest god, or even a reincarnation of him. I say this for several reasons. First, looking back at Lost Constellation, the forest god is depicted as a real jerk, like even worse than the sky cat that May sees in her dreams, or the ass cat, as she so aptly calls it. It's aggressive, angry, and cares little about humans or even its own followers. The janitor, on the other hand, is portrayed as helpful and kind. And I don't think reincarnation, even hundreds of years later, would change his demeanor so drastically. And despite the many supernatural things he does throughout the game, he does have a personality of his own, one that's very down to earth and relatable, as we see when he gets excited about the Smelters game, or asks May to get him a soda. So he's not all esoteric all the time. There's a real person in there somewhere, which flies in the face of the idea that he's really the forest god. So if he isn't the forest god, or a reincarnation of the forest god, then what do I think is going on with the janitor? Well, circling back to the other theories I've proposed on this channel, I believe that the janitor has an advanced form of the glimmer. But not a form of the glimmer that he received from the black goat, a form of the glimmer he received from the forest god. Think about it. If the black goat can give the glimmer to those it takes a liking to, or those who drink from its tainted water, if you believe the theory I proposed in my previous video, then it's likely that the other gods from this universe can do the same thing. This is reinforced, in my view, by the nature of the janitor's abilities themselves. If you look at the many suspicious things he does throughout the game, they're all variations of abilities used by other people who have the glimmer. Like Germ's grandma, he seems to have the gift of foresight. He seems to be able to appear and disappear without explanation, like Ide. And he can travel through dreams, just like May. Perhaps it's also given him an unnaturally long life, as evidenced by the statue and his statement about feeling as old as the trees. While it might not be as groundbreaking as saying that he is the forest god, I think this actually fits with the themes of the story in a more natural way, as it puts his abilities in the same category as everyone else who seems to have the glimmer. A grounded version of the supernatural, just as we see throughout the game. And that's what makes the janitor so important to Night in the Woods. He reinforces not only the themes of workers' rights present in the game, but its supernatural underpinnings as well. But the janitor isn't the only character in Night in the Woods who gives us an opening to the world of theory and speculation. So I hope you'll join me next time as we talk about the importance of the stargazer himself, Mr. Chazikov. Thanks for watching. Huge shout out to James Pruitt, Raven Lampkin, Corey Matson, and Reed, who get early access to these videos thanks to donations of $5 to $10 a month. Big thanks to Wolf.Godwin and Jordi Jaen Moreno, who who provided me with the music for these videos and my channel art. See you guys next time.